Hi there, Tina here from Miss Daisy Patterns. Today I'm going to be making these guys. It's a family of snowmen Christmas carolers. Now each of the items that these guys is wearing is available as a pattern to download from my website, and all the items you need to make these is listed in the description box below. So if you'd like to check that out first, then follow me on into the tutorial. See you there. Right, so this is the pattern that you should have printed out. It'll have different sections on it for each of the outfits for the snow family. It'll also have a carol printout for each of the books. Right, and it'll actually guide you through everything that you need. So like that's going to be the shawl, but every detail is listed on all the patterns. Now you're also going to need some Christmas paper, and that's to back the little carol singing book that each of the snow family is carrying. And apart from that, now main fabric wise, you're going to need some orange felt for the nose, red felt for the clothes, black felt for the top hat, and a blanket. It's a fleece blanket with a blanket stitch trim, right? And once you've all those, the next thing you're going to need is polystyrene balls. You'll need 2 per character, a white fluffy sock per character, per snowman. You're also going to need orange felt for the nose. You're going to need 2 arms, 2 buttons for the eyes, a rubber band, and then each individual item is going to have their own costume. You're going to need a blade cutter, glue sticks, scissors, thread. So they're all the basics that you need. And each of the patterns, if you pin them on and cut them out in the amounts of fabric that is listed on each. Now the character we're going to actually make today is we're going to be making the small version of this mommy snowman carol singer. Okay, so it's the small one, and it's basically the same base to every single one of them. It's either going to be bigger or smaller. Right, so this one is going to be exactly the same as the little boy. And we start with our 2 polystyrene balls. Now the size of these polystyrene balls is actually listed in the description below. So basically you get your knife and you slice off a base, and that'll give a nice smooth base to sit on the table. And then on the opposite side, what you want to do is you want to slice off the top, and then on the smaller one you slice off the base, just like I've done here. That means that one can sit on top of the other and you've got that snowman shape. Right, and what you're going to do next then is glue these 2 together. Now I use quite a bit of glue on this. Right, so that's pop together. Now be careful when you're doing this that you actually try not to slice it at an angle. Try to get the slices straight so as that the snowman actually stands straight. Right, so what I'm going to do next then is I'm actually going to leave that aside because it takes a little while for the glue to dry solid. And we're going to move on to the nose. Now, there are 2 patterns. There's a bigger and a smaller pattern, one for the smaller snowman and the bigger snowman. Right, so basically to make the nose, just cut out 2 of the small, 2 of the large to make the family. And how you turn this up is you literally fold over the top, right, and then fold it in half, creating this shape. Now you can either stitch it or glue it. It's entirely up to you. Stitch or glue. I've stitched my one, but gluing will work perfectly well as well. Right, so now we have the nose, we have the 2 buttons for the eyes, the 2 sticks for the arms, the carol singing book, which we're going to finish off later, and that elastic band is actually going to be for later as well. So the first thing we're going to actually make up is we're going to make the cloak that goes over the small snow girl. Right, so this section basically is equivalent to the top section here. Right, and then the next section, which is the base of the shawl, this goes around the bottom section. Now the thing to watch out for here with this is it actually says on the pattern is to place it on the fold, and the reason why you do that is when you open it up the piece of fabric has to look like this. So you want one continuous length of fabric. Right, so we're going to Yeah, so that basically equates to this section here. Right. And this is going to be exactly the same if you're making the smaller one or the bigger one. It's just different sizes. Right, and what we're going to do here is we're going to do a very simple running stitch in red thread to match the red felt. Right, so I've got the felt right side to right side. Now some felt has a right side to right side, some doesn't. Just check if yours has. And then basically do a running stitch around the curved area and finish it off. You'll see that there it's got actually the tip, right, and that's it opened up. Right. And then laying that right side to right side on the base of the shawl, you just do a running stitch along what will be the neckline. Now again, this can also be glued, it doesn't have to be stitched. Glue will work perfectly fine on it. Right, so that's that snipped off. So that basically is the shawl put together. Right, now you can see, perfect. So that's the shawl put together. Right, now what we want to do here, after we've had the shawl put together, is we want to look at putting that trim onto it. So what I've done here is I've actually just, now the blanket I'm going to use for a variety of projects, and the section of the blanket I'm using for this is actually the blanket stitched area. So all I did was I cut off around the blanket so as I could use it as a trim. Right, so that's that, and I'm going to glue this in place. So just trim it off so as that there's enough, you've got the raw edges gone, and very simply I'm going to glue that in place all the way around. Now alternately, you can also stitch it in place, or if you wanted to actually blanket stitch in, say, a different colour embroidery thread, you could do that too. I just liked the look of the red blanket stitched fleece. Right, so that's glued in place all the way around. Right, and that's basically the shawl finished, the hoodie shawl. And if you're making it for the bigger one, you just use the bigger pattern, but it's exactly the same process. And a final dab of glue at the end, and that seals it all off. Great. Right, perfect. Now, so to actually make the base of the snowman, so that is well and sturdy together. So literally you just open up the sock and pop the polystyrene balls inside. Once you've got them neatly inside, you just trim off the top of the sock, and then using the elastic band just seal off the top of it and do it a few times over. Now if you're making the smaller or the bigger one, this is exactly the same process. And then what I'm doing here is I'm just gluing the tip of the sock that's left over, I'm gluing it down to hold it in place. Now on this particular one, because I have the hood, I'm actually gluing the 2 layers of the sock towards the back, which will give the effect of there being hair underneath the hood. Right, so that's that. Now just put on the cloak. Position it, and then what I like to do just while I'm getting everything right and in shape is just pin it in place. So just pin that in place. Right, and then this is entirely optional. If you want to actually fold the hood over, I like it folded because I like the shape it gives. So if you just pop a piece of glue onto it, hold it in place, and then I also like to pop a piece of glue just at the front of the hood to hold it in place down on the actual head. And then finally removing the pins and putting a little bit of glue on either side to hold in place. Again, this is exactly the same process for the larger snowman. The snow lady, would I say. Right, the next step then is the scarf. Again, the measurement for the scarf is going to be in the description box below. But this is very simply it's a strip of fleece, and measure it around, tie it, trim it, so as that it's not too, it doesn't go down too far. Trim it, that's that. And then what I like to do is, once it's trimmed and it's at the right length, I like to actually just snip into the base of it to create a kind of a feathered effect to the end of the scarf. And with this is exactly the same process for the scarf on every single one of the snowmen carolers. Every one of them. Right. Next step then is to pop on the eyes. Once. Yeah, this is perfect. So next step, pop on the eyes, and again I'm using the glue gun to do that. Just be careful with the glue that it doesn't actually burn your fingers. Sometimes I find that if you use a tweezers to place it on is actually quite handy. So that's the eyes in place. And then for the nose, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use a bit of the sock that's left over and snip a bit of that off, pop it inside the nose to give it a bit of stuffing. And then once that's in there, pop a piece of glue on the top of it and pop it onto the front of the face. Right, so that's that section done. The last thing to do then is the actual carol sheet, the book that the carolers are carrying with them. And there's two sections here. There's a Christmas piece of paper, and then there's actually the carol sheet itself. Now these are printouts, so the actual carol is printed on that piece of paper. And if you just glue them together, exactly like I've done here, and then trim off any of the excess edges that may be left over. Now, they don't have to be perfectly even. And that's exactly the same for each of the snow carolers, whether they're the larger or the smaller ones. It's the same book. So that's that folded in half. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to position the arms at the front. And because the sock is quite a loose weave, and the polystyrene balls you can actually push are quite soft. You know, they're quite porous, so you can actually push the stick into the polystyrene ball. Once you've got the position right and you've got the book where you want it to be, if you glue the book in position onto the stick arm. Okay, just like that. And then pop it in. Now, I didn't glue it in place. You can if you want to, the arms. And I also find that if any of the branches have got any little sections that are uneven on them, if you snip it off before you pop them in, it'll make it easier for the arm to pop in place. And so that is the little girl snowman finished, and that's the mum. Right, so that's those two. Now the next thing is you'll see that the little boy caroler is exactly the same. The only difference he has is his hat is different. And with the hat, basically, I just cut off a rectangle off the blanket, stitched up the back of it, put an elastic band around the top, and then exactly the same way as I've feathered out the scarf, I've done that to the top of the hat to create a kind of like a little pom-pom at the top. And that is the little guy done. And then moving on to the dad snowman. It's the hat is the item on this guy that's different. And with that, the pattern is also list is also in those pages you're going to print out. Now there's two versions of this pattern. You can either make it in felt or you can make it in card, but it'll specify on the pattern whichever section you want to use. So for this one, I'm going to actually, I've done it, I want to do it in felt. And you'll see that it's basically, it's a rectangle of fabric, a small circle, and then a larger circle of fabric. If you're doing the cardboard version of it, what you'll do is you'll actually cut out that inner circle, because you'll be able to fold it over to glue it to the top section. But it's all detailed in the pattern. So the first thing you do with the felt is you fold it over and you stitch it together there. And once that's stitched in place, you then pop on the top of the hat and you stitch it around. I would use a whip stitch with this. Then once you're finished, if you turn the hat right side out, okay, so that the hat is right side out, and then place it. Now you can either stitch or glue in place, but if you push out the end of the actual cylinder you've made, pop it down onto the full felt circle in the center and glue in place or stitch in place, right? You'll see that I'll actually pop out this so it'll show you exactly what it'll look like. Right, so that would be the full circle in place. And then once it'll be solid, but what we want to do is we want to make a hole in it. So all I do is get the scissors, snip into the four sections, and then pop it up. And then in order to create a stuffing for the hat, again, I'm just going to use some of the leftover sock and pop it inside. And then finally, to make the entire snowman caroling set match, I've just put a trim of the blanket with the blanket stitch around the hat. And then finally is just glue the hat in place. So a little bit of glue all the way around, pop it onto the top of the snowman's head. That's him finished. Right, so that is the dad, the son, the mom, and the sister. So that's the entire family. I really loved making these guys. They'll make a great addition to my Christmas decorations for this year. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And remember, every Tuesday and Thursday we'll be having a new crafty make right up until Christmas. See you soon.